Snow fell over Manhattan like quiet ashes the night Marissa Cole realized her Christmas had already ended. The city glowed with warm lights, families gathered inside apartment windows, and carols floated across the streets, but in her small Queens apartment, everything felt cold. Marissa sat on the edge of the couch, wrapping her thin sweater tighter around herself as she glanced again at her phone. No text, no call, no Merry Christmas. And Fortnite. Her husband, Daniel, had left 2 days earlier for what he claimed was a last-minute business meeting in Chicago. She tried believing him, tried so hard that her chest trembled with the effort, but the silence stretched too long, and the excuses had become too practiced. Her 5-year-old son, Liam, slept on her lap, his little fingers clutching the holiday book she'd been reading before he drifted off. She stroked his hair gently, telling herself she needed to stay strong for him at least. But her hands shook. Her insomnia had worsened these past months. Daniel's sharp words echoing in her mind each night. "You're paranoid, Marissa. You overthink everything." At midnight, her phone lit up, not with a message from Daniel, but with a notification from social media. A popular lifestyle influencer, Brooke Langford, was live streaming from the Park Hyatt, New York, champagne in hand, lit by the warm glow of a luxury suite. Marissa almost scrolled past until she saw it, a reflection in the suite's mirrored wall. A man's silhouette. Daniel's silhouette, the same navy coat she bought him last Christmas, the same posture, the same laugh, the same betrayal she had feared for months. Her breath caught. Something inside her, something she had protected, hidden, and silenced, finally broke. But she didn't scream. She didn't call him. She didn't beg. She simply whispered to the sleeping boy in her arms, "I'm sorry you had to see me like this, sweetheart. But Mommy's done waiting." Outside, snow thickened, covering the city in white. Inside, Marissa stood up slowly, her decision forming with painful clarity. This Christmas, Daniel had chosen someone else. And soon, very soon, Marissa would choose herself. She just didn't know that her choice would set off a chain of events leading to her disappearance, and a message that would destroy Daniel's world. For years, Marissa Cole had convinced herself that every crack in her marriage could be repaired with a little more patience, a little more silence, a little more understanding. She forgave Daniel's long work nights. She forgave the missed anniversaries. She forgave the cold way he sometimes looked at her, like she was a burden he didn't remember choosing. But the truth was simpler, harsher, and far more painful. She had been training herself to live with disappointment. The morning after she saw Daniel's silhouette in Brooke Langford's live stream, the apartment felt heavier than usual, as if the walls themselves knew a truth she'd been pretending not to see. Liam played with his toy cars on the living room rug, humming softly. Marissa watched him, her chest tightening with guilt. He deserved more than a mother drowning quietly in heartbreak. He deserved more than a father who kept disappearing. She walked to the kitchen, opened the cabinet, and found Daniel's travel mug, still spotless. He always took it on business trips, every single time. Logically, he should have taken it this time too, but it sat untouched, gleaming under the dim morning light. A detail small enough to ignore, but sharp enough to hurt. That was how betrayal often worked, quiet clues piling up until they became undeniable. Her phone buzzed. A message from her landlord. Rent overdue. Final reminder. H. At noon, she walked Liam to the community center for his holiday play rehearsal. On the way, her coworker Talia spotted her and hurried over, bundled in a thick winter coat. "Hey, I thought I saw Daniel yesterday near 5th Avenue, Talia said casually. "He was with someone, maybe a client?" "I didn't want to assume." The words sliced deeper than intended. Marissa forced a smile and nodded. "Oh, maybe he had a meeting," she said, though her voice cracked on the last word. Talia's expression softened with concern. "Are you okay? You seem tired." Really tired. Marissa wanted to say everything. She wanted to unravel the knots inside her chest, to confess the nights she cried quietly in the bathroom so Liam wouldn't hear. But exhaustion had become her second skin. "I'm fine," she whispered. "Just didn't sleep much." By the time she returned home, her hands trembled, not from fear, but from clarity. She finally saw how long she had been shrinking herself to fit into a life Daniel no longer cared to share. When she opened the hallway closet to hang her coat, something fell from the top shelf, a small silver bag with a Park Hyatt logo. Inside, 2 champagne glasses wrapped in gold tissue. Her breath hitched. They weren't hers. They never had been. She sat down on the floor, the truth surrounding her like the winter cold. Daniel wasn't drifting away. He had already left. Snow hammered against the windows that evening, rattling the thin glass of the small queen's apartment as if the storm itself wanted to warn Marissa that something bigger, something darker was coming. Liam napped on the couch under a fleece blanket, cheeks rosy from the cold walk home. Marissa tucked the edges around him, then stood still for a moment, listening to the wind howl like a wounded animal. She hadn't spoken to Daniel since the live stream. She hadn't even tried. Part of her wanted answers, an explanation, maybe even an apology. But the larger part, the part that curled tightly inside her ribs, already knew he would deny everything. He always did. At 6:42 p.m., her phone rang. Her heart leapt, Daniel, but the screen flashed unknown number. She let it ring, then fall silent. Minutes later, her phone vibrated again. A voicemail this time. Hands trembling, she pressed play. Daniel's voice filled the room, flat and annoyed. "Marissa, I'm boarding my flight. Stop calling. I told you, this trip is important. Don't make this dramatic." She stood frozen. The message was clearly recorded that morning, hours before Brooke's livestream showed him lounging in a luxury suite nowhere near an airport. The lie hit harder than the cold wind outside. Her stomach twisted. Something felt wrong, too wrong. She grabbed her coat and stepped onto the fire escape, letting the snow hit her face. Queens was blanketed in white, street lamps glowing like dim candles. Car tires hissed against thick slush. Someone across the street shoveled their driveway, humming a Christmas song. The world went on as normal, while hers cracked apart seam by seam. She returned inside and dialed Daniel not to beg, but because she needed to hear how far he would push the lie. He declined the call. She tried again. Declined. A third time. Voicemail. His voice played once more, rehearsed and dismissive. "I'm busy. Don't call unless it's about Liam." Her grip tightened on the phone until her knuckles turned white. She wanted to scream. Instead, she breathed slowly, quietly, because screaming had never helped. Screaming only made Daniel call her unstable. But tonight, the silence was unbearable. She turned on the small radio in the kitchen. Christmas music crackled through the static, cheerful and bright. It made everything worse. At 9 p.m., the power flickered and died. The heater shut off with a low groan. The apartment plunged into darkness except for the soft glow of her iPhone screen. The storm had taken out half the block. She lit a candle and sat on the floor beside Liam, hugging her knees. Tears pooled in her eyes, not from fear of the dark, but from the chilling realization that she had never truly mattered to the man she vowed to build a life with. Hours passed. The storm raged. The silence grew heavier, and somewhere in a warm hotel suite high above Manhattan, Daniel Cole ignored every call, every responsibility, every truth. Because the woman he was with made him feel important, and the woman he abandoned had stopped begging. The next morning, the storm had finally quieted, but inside Marissa, another kind of storm was gathering, one that no warm sunrise could melt. She walked Liam to his holiday rehearsal at the community center, the sidewalks still thick with untouched snow. Her boots left soft impressions behind her, as though even the earth needed proof she was still holding on. Liam ran ahead, laughing as he kicked at a pile of snow. His joy was a small light in her otherwise collapsing world. Marissa forced a smile. He deserved that smile, even if it felt heavy on her face. Inside the center's lobby, parents chatted about presents, dinners, and travel plans. Everyone seemed wrapped in their own warmth, while she felt like a ghost drifting through a holiday she no longer belonged to. "Marissa?" She turned to see her coworker, Grace Hollins, bundled in a fluffy beige coat, holding a Starbucks cup that steamed in the morning chill. "Oh hey," Marissa said softly, brushing snow from her sleeves. Grace hesitated before speaking, as if weighing whether the words would help or hurt. "I hope I'm not crossing a line, but I thought I saw Daniel yesterday." Marissa's breath hitched, though she kept her expression steady. "Oh, he's supposed to be in Chicago." Grace frowned. "That's the strange part. He wasn't alone. He was walking on Fifth Avenue with a woman, long blonde hair, designer coat. I assumed she was a colleague, but then..." She lowered her voice. "They looked close. Close." The word echoed through Marissa like a cracked bell. She swallowed hard. Thanks for telling me, she managed, though her throat felt tight. I'm sure it's nothing. But the truth was clawing its way to the surface, refusing to be buried again. Grace gently touched her arm. You look exhausted. Are you really okay? Marissa nodded automatically. Just didn't sleep. The lie tasted bitter. After dropping Liam off, she walked home slowly, replaying Grace's words, replaying the live stream, replaying every moment she had brushed aside for the sake of hope. The signs had always been there. She had just been too loyal, too forgiving, too afraid of breaking the family she loved. Back at the apartment, she opened the front door and immediately noticed something off. A faint smell of cologne, Daniel's cologne, hung in the air. Her heart thudded. Had he come home last night? Had he come and left again, without even checking on Liam? She stepped inside cautiously, scanning the space. And then she saw it. On the kitchen counter sat a receipt from a jewelry store on Fifth Avenue, time-stamped 2 days ago. A purchase for a diamond bracelet, something Daniel had never bought for her in 12 years. Her knees weakened. The world tipped sideways. The pieces weren't just falling into place, they were cutting her as they locked together. She picked up the receipt with trembling fingers, feeling the cold truth settle into her bones. Daniel wasn't hiding an affair. He was living one. And she had been living in denial. As she stood there, alone in a kitchen filled with silence and broken trust, Marissa realized something she had feared to admit. Staying was destroying her. And soon, she would learn that leaving would save her life. While Marissa stood frozen in her kitchen, clutching the Fifth Avenue receipt that told the truth more bluntly than Daniel ever had, her husband was miles away, celebrating a Christmas he never intended to share with her. On the 34th floor of the Park Hyatt, New York, the city sprawled beneath Daniel Cole like a glittering kingdom he believed he deserved. Lights shimmered across the skyline, reflecting in the floor-to-ceiling windows of the luxury suite. A fresh bottle of champagne rested in a silver bucket beside him. Everything looked perfect, everything except the truth. Brooke Langford lounged on the king-size bed, draped in a white silk robe that probably cost more than Marissa's monthly rent. Her blonde hair framed her face like a magazine cover, and she held up her phone for a selfie, making sure to capture the diamond bracelet glinting on her wrist, the same bracelet Daniel had bought 2 days earlier. You didn't tag me in the live stream, Daniel muttered, pouring himself another drink. Brooke smirked. Relax, I know you said you're not ready to go public. But honestly, Daniel, people already suspect. You keep acting like you're married to a PR disaster. Too. Her words stung him more than he would admit. Marissa is not a disaster. She just gets emotional. Too emotional. Brooke rolled her eyes. Right, the classic overreacting wife. Daniel, come on. You need someone who understands your lifestyle, someone who fits your world. She meant herself. And he didn't disagree. But beneath Daniel's arrogance was a flicker of something he couldn't name: guilt, maybe, or fear. Or the small, haunting memory of Marissa's tired eyes when he last saw her. He quickly drowned it with champagne. Brooke climbed into his lap, her voice dripping sweetness and poison. Just call her, she whispered. Tell her it's over. Make it clean. Daniel hesitated. Not tonight. Why not? Brooke pressed, running her fingers through his hair. It's Christmas. A new beginning. He exhaled sharply. Because Liam deserves better than finding out like that. Brooke's expression shifted just for a moment, showing annoyance she couldn't hide. Well, if you won't call her, at least stop lying to me about when you'll leave her. He didn't respond. Instead, he glanced at his phone. 5 missed calls. All from Marissa. Brooke snatched the phone before he could unlock it. Delete them, she insisted. You owe her nothing. Daniel froze. The request felt colder than the snowstorm outside. Brooke, she's still my wife, he said quietly. And I'm the one you're spending Christmas with, she shot back. Silence tightened the room. Brooke looked triumphant, as if she had finally cornered him into a choice he didn't want to make yet. Daniel stood abruptly, pulling away from her. I need some air. Brooke's smile thinned. Don't take too long. The champagne's getting warm. As he walked toward the window, watching snow drift between skyscrapers, a strange unease crawled up his spine. He didn't know why. He didn't know that at that very moment, Marissa had found the bracelet receipt. He didn't know she had already stopped believing his lies. And he certainly didn't know that within 48 hours, the woman he had taken for granted, his entire marriage, would be gone, leaving behind a single message that would shatter everything he thought he controlled. Marissa didn't pack in a hurry. She didn't move like a woman running away. She moved like someone who had finally reached the quiet edge of her breaking point, the place where silence becomes strength instead of surrender. Every motion was deliberate, almost painfully calm. The world had already spun out. She refused to spin with it anymore. She folded Liam's clothes into a small suitcase, first warm sweaters, his favorite dinosaur pajamas, the little hat with floppy ears he never went outside without. She placed his worn, stuffed bear on top, the one he carried everywhere. Her hands trembled as she zipped the bag closed, not from fear, but from the gravity of what she was about to do. In the next room, Liam napped peacefully on the couch, unaware that his mother's heart was splintering into choices no mother should ever have to make. Marissa walked to the bedroom she once shared with Daniel. She stood in the doorway, staring at the bed where her tears had stained the pillow too many nights. The closet held reminders of the life she had tried to build, of the woman she had once been, before the gaslighting, before the loneliness, before the lies turned into a second language. She picked up her phone and opened the banking app. Account restricted. Unauthorized activity detected. Her chest tightened. Daniel had frozen the joint account. Of course he had. Good, she thought. Then he won't see what I'm about to do. She reached into the drawer where she kept important papers. Medical records, Liam's school forms, insurance documents, and most crucial, her photos of the financial spreadsheets she had discovered weeks earlier. Proof of Daniel's off-book funds. Proof he never wanted anyone to find. She slid everything into a folder and tucked it deep into her suitcase. By the time the snow slowed outside, the apartment felt different, emptier, as if it sensed she would not return. She found a small notepad in the kitchen and sat at the table. The same table where she once hoped Daniel might join them for family dinners. She held the pen for a long moment, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the muted city noises below. Finally, she wrote the only words she knew still had power over him. Don't look for us. No explanation, no apology, no emotion, just truth. She placed the note beside her phone on the dining table, her silent declaration that she was done chasing someone who never turned around. She lifted Liam into her arms, careful not to wake him. His small hand instinctively clutched her shoulder. He trusted her, without question. That trust was the only thing keeping her steady. The hallway outside smelled faintly of old carpet and winter air as she stepped out, suitcase rolling softly behind her. One last glance toward the apartment, one last breath. She closed the door. Behind her, the life she had tried to salvage collapsed quietly. Ahead of her, an uncertain road awaited, but it belonged to her. 2 days later, when Daniel Cole finally returned to a dark, silent apartment in Queens, the first thing he saw was her phone. The second was the note. And with those 5 words, Daniel's world began to unravel. When Daniel Cole stepped into the dim apartment 2 days later, he expected irritation, maybe cold silence, Marissa's usual reaction whenever he forgot to check in. What he didn't expect was emptiness, so complete it echoed. No lights, no toys scattered on the rug. No gentle voice humming to calm Liam after a nightmare, just a stillness that prickled under his skin. "Marissa?" he called out. Nothing. He flicked the switch. The overhead light buzzed to life, illuminating the barren living room. His eyes darted around. The air felt wrong, cleaner, lighter, missing the chaos of everyday life. Then he saw her phone on the table. A chill unlike any winter wind slid through him. He picked it up, confused and annoyed. What the hell? Then he saw the note. 5 words. 5 quiet, razor-sharp words. Don't look for us. The paper trembled between his fingers. His jaw clenched. His heartbeat stuttered, an unfamiliar sensation for a man who always thought he controlled every outcome. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, though his voice cracked ever so slightly. He grabbed his phone, dialing Marissa. Straight to voicemail. He tried again. And again. Nothing. His annoyance grew into something sharper. Not guilt, not fear. Control slipping. He tore through the apartment, searching for signs of where she'd gone. Drawers half empty. Liam's favorite toys missing. Her textbooks gone. The diaper bag disappeared. Her coat missing from the hook. Unbelievable, he hissed. When he couldn't find answers inside the apartment, he stormed into the bedroom and yanked open the closet, clothes gone, suitcases gone. Even the fireproof lockbox where he kept personal documents had been opened. Something cold twisted in his stomach. He dropped to his knees and checked the bottom drawer, the drawer where he kept his confidential files. Empty. Jesus, no. There's second sheen. He rifled frantically through folders, flipping papers, throwing things aside. Then he found it, a single sheet left behind, torn at the corner. It belonged to his private spreadsheet, the one detailing his off-book transactions. His pulse pounded in his skull. She knew. She had known for longer than he realized. Daniel grabbed his coat and stormed out, heading straight for the parking lot. Snow swirled around him as he scraped ice off his windshield with trembling hands. He wasn't panicking, not yet, but something inside him had begun to crack, something he had spent years patching with arrogance and lies. He drove toward Manhattan, tires sliding on the slick roads, replaying the last few weeks. Had she been distant? Yes. Too quiet? Yes. Asking too many questions? Absolutely. But leaving? Taking their son? No, that wasn't like her. Unless he had pushed her further than he realized. Back in Queens, after circling the block for any sign of her, he returned home defeated. He collapsed into a chair, rubbing his temples. Then his eyes drifted to the trash can and something caught his attention. A crumpled Amazon shipping label. He smoothed it out. A package addressed to Green Hollow Cabin Rentals, Vermont. His breath hitched. She wasn't just gone. She had outmaneuvered him. And for the first time since meeting her, Daniel felt something new, something he didn't know how to control. Fear. Green Hollow Cabin Rentals sat deep in the Vermont woods, tucked between frozen pines and a narrow road blanketed in untouched snow. The world here was quiet, too quiet for someone who had spent years drowning in noise she pretended not to hear. When Marissa stepped out of the rideshare van with Liam asleep on her shoulder, the cold bit at her cheeks. But for the first time in years, she felt something close to relief. The cabin was small but warm, smelling faintly of pine wood and old books. A fireplace crackled gently. She placed Liam on the couch and wrapped a blanket around him. He murmured her name, half dreaming. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered. "We're safe. For now." She sat at the small wooden table, exhaustion settling into her bones. She hadn't slept in nearly 30 hours. Her anxiety pulsed behind her eyes. Her hands shook as she pulled out the documents she'd taken Daniel's off-book records, the photos, the timestamps, proof of everything she had tried to ignore. She wasn't a strategist. She wasn't a fighter. She wasn't even sure she was strong, but she had something now she hadn't had before. Choice. A knock at the door made her jump. Her breath caught. Daniel? Already? She crept to the window, peeking through the curtain. The man standing outside wasn't Daniel Cole. It was Dr. Adrian Hayes. He looked out of place in the snow, still wearing his city coat, his hair dusted white. His expression was tight with worry. Marissa opened the door slowly. "Adrian? What? How did you? You didn't show up for work. Your phone was off. I checked with your landlord." He paused, chest rising with icy breaths. "Marissa, you scared the hell out of me." Her eyes burned. No one, not even her husband, had said those words to her in years. I had to leave," she whispered. He stepped inside, closing the door against the cold. His gaze drifted to the folder on the table, then to Liam sleeping on the couch. Understanding flickered in his eyes, followed by something sharper anger on. "You didn't leave without a reason," he said gently. The words punctured her composure. Her shoulders shook. He lied. For months. Maybe years. "And I thought if I tried harder." "Marissa." Adrian's voice softened but didn't waver. "You've been trying alone." She covered her face with her hands, the weight of years pressed down all at once, silence, gaslighting, loneliness disguised as loyalty. Adrian didn't touch her, didn't rush her, didn't ask for details she wasn't ready to give. He simply sat in the chair across from her, the quiet presence of someone who saw what she had been hiding. Outside, snowfall softened the world. Inside, something else softened too, an invisible but undeniable shift. Because for the first time, in a very long time, a man looked at Marissa, not with annoyance, or impatience, or superiority, but with concern, with respect, with something she didn't yet dare name. And she didn't know it yet, but Adrian Hayes was about to become the one steady force in a story that was just beginning to spiral out of Daniel's control. While snow thickened around the Vermont cabin, where Marissa and Liam slept safely for the first time in months, Manhattan moved at its usual frantic pace except for one man whose world had begun to slow, crack, and tilt sharply out of alignment. Daniel Cole stepped into the sleek elevator of his Fifth Avenue office building, jaw tight, coat still dusted with melting snow from his frantic overnight drive. He hadn't slept, he hadn't eaten. All he could think about was the note. "Don't look for us." He reread it every 10 minutes as if staring at the handwriting might somehow unravel the meaning. It didn't. When the elevator doors opened onto the 27th floor, his assistant, Morgan, nearly dropped her tablet. "Daniel, what happened to you? You look... Where's the team?" "I need the morning briefing," he snapped, brushing past her. She scrambled to keep up. "Actually, there have been developments." He stopped walking. "Developments?" His voice was sharp enough to draw eyes from nearby desks. Morgan swallowed. "Compliance requested a meeting with you. Something about flagged transactions." His stomach dropped. Hard. "Flagged what?" he demanded, though he already knew had known ever since he saw the empty drawer in Queens. Morgan lowered her voice. "Internal audit found inconsistencies in the digital reports for the past quarter. Your name is attached to all of them." A cold sweat broke across his skin. Marissa. She had taken the files. She had known. He forced a scoff. "It's a misunderstanding. I'll handle it." But the lie tasted different, now bitter, panicked. In the conference room, 3 members of compliance sat waiting behind a wall of glass. Their expressions were neutral, too neutral. "Mr. Cole, please sit," said the director. Daniel kept standing. "What's this about?" The director clicked a remote. A screen lit up with rows of numbers, highlighted in red. Unauthorized transfers, duplicate invoices, personal accounts receiving funds, all paths leading back to him. "We need you to explain these anomalies," the director said. "They're not anomalies," Daniel said quickly. "There must be a systems error." One of the analysts slid a folder forward. "We traced the origin. They weren't system-generated. They were uploaded manually. From your login." His pulse thrashed in his throat. Someone hacked it. But even he didn't believe the excuse. Then came the final blow. Morgan rushed into the room, pale. "Daniel, Brooke Langford just posted something." The director turned his laptop toward Daniel. A video. Brooke's voice. Daniel's voice. Clear as crystal. "Brooke, so all this money you're saying nobody will notice?" "Daniel, no one checks the off-book accounts. They trust me." The room went silent. Daniel felt the floor tilt. His mistress had recorded him. And leaked it. "Mr. Cole," the director said sternly, "you are placed on immediate administrative leave pending a full investigation." Daniel opened his mouth to speak, to deny, to explain, but nothing came out. Only a dry ache burned at the back of his throat. His control, his precious, absolute control, was gone. As he stumbled out of the building, snow swirling under the gray Manhattan sky, one realization hit him harder than the scandal. Marissa didn't just leave him. She dismantled him. Quietly. Completely. Intentionally. And it was only the beginning. Daniel Cole had always believed he was the smartest one in every room, the one pulling the strings, the one choosing who stayed and who left. But as he sat alone in his sleek Mercedes S-Class parked outside the Fifth Avenue Tower, a bitter truth seeped in like cold air through a cracked window. He was no longer in control. In fact, he was being outmaneuvered by the 2 women he thought he controlled. He slammed his fist against the steering wheel. "Unbelievable," he growled. "This isn't happening." But it was. His phone vibrated with notifications. Dozens, maybe hundreds. He opened the first one. "Brooke Langford has posted a new video." His stomach twisted. No, 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 no. He tapped the video. Brooke sat in a high-end apartment with the Manhattan skyline glittering behind her. Her makeup was flawless, her tone calm and almost mournful, perfectly crafted for maximum public sympathy. "Hi everyone," she began softly. "I never wanted to make this public, but I can't stay silent anymore." Daniel felt his blood turn to ice. Brooke continued, voice trembling just enough to be convincing. "For months, I've been involved in something I deeply regret. I trusted someone who wasn't honest, not with me, not with his wife, and not with his company." A screenshot flashed on the screen. Daniel's name. His emails. His voice from the leaked audio. I didn't know about the illegal financial activity, she said, touching her chest dramatically. Once I learned the truth, I realized I had to come forward for my safety and for everyone affected. My safety? Daniel yelled at the phone. You little snake. But the world wasn't listening to him anymore. Brooke wiped a staged tear. Daniel Cole manipulated me, lied to me, and used me. If something happens to me, please know, I tried to warn the company. I won. Comment sections exploded instantly. Oh my God, she's so brave. Expose him. He's done. What a monster. Daniel threw his phone onto the passenger seat. You recorded me. You set me up. He didn't know he was pacing the sidewalk until a security guard approached. Sir, you need to calm down. Calm? He was losing everything. His career, his reputation, his carefully curated image. Even the mistress he sacrificed his marriage for had turned on him. And underneath all of it, something far more devastating lurked. Marissa had known about the financial fraud long enough to disappear and long enough to protect herself. A sudden fear stabbed through him. If she turned those documents over to the authorities, the scandal Brooke ignited would look like child's play. His phone buzzed again, this time with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. B. He stared at the message. Brooke wanted something. Of course she did. This wasn't just betrayal. It was negotiation. He climbed back into the car, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. I'm fixing this, he muttered. Marissa isn't going to ruin me, and Brooke isn't going to control me. But deep down, even if he couldn't admit it yet, Daniel Cole was no longer the hunter. He was the hunted. And the two women he underestimated were about to push him into a corner he couldn't escape. By the time Daniel Cole pulled into his driveway that night, the December sky had collapsed into darkness. Snow slammed against the windshield, blurring the streetlights and swallowing the world in white. His hands shook on the steering wheel, not from the cold, but from the unraveling that had begun inside him. He stormed into the apartment, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. The note still sat on the table, mocking him. Don't look for us. He crumpled it in his fist, pacing like a trapped animal. He had lost control of the narrative. His career and Brooke's public betrayal had made him a national spectacle in less than 12 hours. Paparazzi were camped outside his office. His boss had demanded an urgent meeting the next morning. Crisis management firms were calling him nonstop, but none of that compared to the fear that Marissa, quiet, gentle, compliant Marissa, was suddenly capable of disappearing with their son. He tore through the apartment again, desperate for clues. And then he remembered the Amazon label he found earlier. Green Hollow Cabin Rentals, Vermont. He pulled out his laptop and slammed it open. His fingers flew over the keyboard as he searched the name. A map popped up deep in the woods, far from towns, reachable only by a single winding road through the mountains. Of course she'd hide somewhere like that, he muttered. Always running, always dramatic. End quote. Even he didn't believe his own words. He printed the directions, grabbed his coat, and ran downstairs only to be met by a wall of blinding snow. A blizzard warning flashed across his phone screen. Roads hazardous, travel discouraged. He didn't care. He needed to find her. Not because he missed her, not because he loved her, but because she had the documents that could end him completely. He climbed into his Mercedes, engine roaring to life. He punched the steering wheel again as if the violence could steady him. You're not ruining me, Marissa. Not after everything I've built. As he drove toward the George Washington Bridge, the snow thickened, turning the highway into a maze of shifting white. His wipers struggled to keep up. Cars crawled along with hazard lights flashing. Daniel sped past them. Every few minutes, he checked the printed directions, imagining her sitting in some cabin with Liam, thinking she had won. Thinking she had power over him. She doesn't get to leave, he spat. She doesn't get to decide the terms. But beneath the anger lurked something far more dangerous: fear. Fear that she had finally seen him for who he was. Fear that she had stopped being afraid. The mountains loomed ahead, dark and jagged. The storm howled louder, a cold warning he refused to hear. He gripped the wheel tighter. By the time he reached the narrow forest road that led to Green Hollow, the storm had nearly swallowed the sky. The trees leaned in like silent witnesses as his headlights cut through the snow. She's here, he whispered. And he wasn't leaving without her, or without the evidence she stole. What Daniel didn't know, what he couldn't have imagined, was that Marissa wasn't alone anymore. And the man waiting inside that cabin would change everything. The snowstorm thickened around Green Hollow, like nature itself wanted to shield Marissa from the man barreling toward her. Inside the small cabin, the lights flickered gently, the fire crackled, and Liam slept curled beneath a quilt on the couch. For a moment, just one fragile moment, Marissa felt something close to peace. But peace rarely lasts. A loud crunch of tires over ice snapped her back into herself. Headlights sliced through the darkness outside, sweeping across the cabin walls. Her blood froze. Adrian, seated across the table with a file of paperwork spread before him, looked up instantly. "Who's that? Did you tell anyone you were coming here?" Marissa shook her head, fear tightening her throat. "No one knows. No one except." She didn't finish, because she already knew. "Daniel." Adrian stood, his posture shifting into protective instinct. "Stay inside. Don't open the door unless I say so." She swallowed hard. "Adrian, he won't leave. He never leaves when he wants control." Adrian's jaw clenched. "Then we'll make it clear he no longer has any." Outside, Daniel slammed the car door and stumbled toward the cabin, fighting the wind. Snow plastered his hair to his forehead, and the storm twisted around him like anger made visible. He reached the porch and pounded on the door, rattling the wood. "Marissa, open the door." She flinched at the sound, but she didn't move. Daniel pounded harder, voice cracking. "I know you're in there. You can't hide from me." Adrian stepped closer to the door. "Back away, Daniel." Silence. Then a laugh, low, furious, disbelieving. Of course, you're here." Adrian didn't flinch. "Leave now. She doesn't want to see you." Daniel's voice rose, wild with panic and rage. "She's my wife. You think you get to say where she goes? You think you can?" Marissa stepped forward, though her knees shook. She couldn't hide forever. She couldn't let Adrian face her battles alone. She pulled back the curtain, and there he was. Daniel's face was red from the cold, eyes wild, snow clinging to his coat. When he saw her through the glass, something inside him cracked. "Marissa, open the door. We need to talk." She shook her head, tears burning her eyes. "No, Daniel, not this time." His expression darkened. "You took Liam. You stole documents from me. You're ruining everything. Thanks for watching." Her voice trembled, but not from fear this time, from exhaustion. Everything was already ruined. You just never looked long enough to see it. Adrian placed a steady hand on her shoulder. Daniel's eyes flared with jealousy, fury, and wounded pride. "You think he's going to save you?" Daniel spat. "You think this little escape changes anything?" Marissa breathed in, letting the truth settle in her bones. "Yes," she whispered, "it changes everything. Everyone. S.of.M." Daniel slammed his fist against the door, snow spraying from his coat. "You come outside right now, or—" Adrian cut him off, voice iron steady. "Or what, Daniel? You've already lost her, and soon you'll lose much more." Lightning flashed in Daniel's expression, fear, fury, and realization all tangled into one. Because for the first time in their marriage, Marissa wasn't afraid of him. And that terrified him more than the storm ever could. Daniel didn't leave. Even as the storm clawed at the trees and whipped snow across the porch, he stayed frozen in front of the cabin door, breathing hard, staring through the narrow window at the woman he once believed would never defy him. His anger had cracked into something else, something desperate, unstable, and edged with fear. Inside, Marissa stepped back from the window, her heart pounding. Adrian guided her gently toward the table. "He can't come in," Adrian said quietly. "Not unless you let him." "Enter." "I know," she whispered, "but that's what scares him." Outside, Daniel's voice came again, louder, rawer. "Marissa, please. Just talk to me." She squeezed her eyes shut. Please was not a word Daniel used unless something inside him was unraveling beyond repair. But she had heard it before, always, when he feared losing control, never when he feared losing her. The snow softened briefly, and through the glass, Daniel lifted his head. His face was pale, his hair plastered to his forehead, and for the first time, Marissa saw something in him she had never seen before. He looked small. He looked lost. He looked afraid of her silence. He stepped closer to the window, hands trembling against the fogged glass. "Marissa, I drove all night. I didn't know where you were. I thought—" His voice broke slightly. I thought something happened to you. It's masked. It's masked. She stared back at him, her breath catching not from affection, not from guilt, but from the shock of what she finally realized. Daniel didn't fear for her safety. He feared losing his image, his control, his narrative. Please, he whispered, don't make this worse. Marissa exhaled slowly. There it is, she thought, the real plea, the real priority, not her, not Liam, just his consequences. Adrian stood behind her, a calm, steady presence. You don't have to answer him, he murmured. But she did. Because silence had power, but so did truth. She stepped forward again, just enough for Daniel to see her clearly. His eyes widened. She wasn't the trembling woman he used to corner with sharp words. She wasn't crying. She wasn't pleading. She was composed, still shaken, still hurt, but anchored in a way he couldn't comprehend. Marissa, he breathed, palms flat on the glass. Come outside. We can fix this. Her voice, when it came, was steady as the falling snow. No, Daniel. You can't fix what you broke. His face twisted. You think you're innocent? You think taking Liam and running away makes you the good guy here? She shook her head. I didn't run away. I removed myself from a life you shattered. Daniel's breath fogged the window. You don't get to decide this without me. Marissa stepped closer, close enough for him to see the truth in her eyes. I just did. The words struck him harder than any accusation. His clenched jaw slackened, and in that fragile second, he truly saw her, not the wife who molded herself to his needs, but a woman who had outgrown his control, a woman who no longer feared him, a woman he had lost. He staggered back from the window as if she had struck him. The storm screamed around him, swallowing his silhouette as he stumbled toward the edge of the porch. Inside the cabin, Marissa's knees trembled, but Adrian caught her elbow gently. You were stronger than he ever believed, he said. And for the first time in a very long time, she believed it too. Back in Manhattan, the world Daniel Cole once dominated was collapsing faster than he could catch his breath. His reputation, polished, curated, meticulously maintained, was deteriorating in real time. By the time he reached the city after the failed confrontation at the cabin, his phone buzzed nonstop with calls from his boss, the compliance team, and unfamiliar numbers that could only be reporters. He ignored them all. Snow slushed beneath his shoes as he pushed through the revolving doors of his office building on Fifth Avenue. People stared. Some whispered. Some didn't bother hiding their smirks. Overnight, Daniel had gone from respected executive to headline material, and the kind no one wanted to be associated with. He stepped into the elevator, catching a glimpse of himself in the mirrored wall. A man unraveling, eyes bloodshot, hair disheveled, fear tucked beneath every angry breath. When he reached the executive floor, his assistant Morgan hurried toward him, face flushed. Daniel, where have you been? Legal has been trying to reach you all morning. The CFO is furious. Botter. En recorder, en botter. I'll handle it, he snapped. You can't handle this, Morgan whispered urgently. There's more. Before he could respond, the conference room door flew open. The CFO, the head of legal, and two board members stepped out like an execution squad. Cole, inside, now. Daniel followed, pulse thundering. The moment the door shut, the CFO threw a stack of printed screenshots on the table. Brooks' video, his transcribed voice, his financial discrepancies, the internal audit findings. Every piece lined up like nails meant to seal his coffin. What the hell is this? Daniel barked. The CFO glared at him. You tell us. You've put the entire company at risk. It's taken out of context. Brooke manipulated. Save it, legal interrupted. The SEC contacted us this morning. They're opening a preliminary inquiry, because of you. Daniel's stomach twisted violently. You have no right to blame me for this. Your mistress recorded you discussing illegal accounts, the CFO thundered. And your wife has apparently disappeared with confidential documents that prove everything. Daniel's face drained of color. They knew she had the files. They knew she had left him. They knew he no longer had control. Where is she, Daniel? Legal demanded. Does she intend to cooperate with investigators? I don't know, he choked. The CFO leaned in, eyes cold. You better pray she doesn't. Because if she hands over those documents before we do damage control, you're not just losing your job, you're going to prison." A suffocating silence filled the room. Then the CFO delivered the final blow. "You're suspended effective immediately. You are to leave the building, surrender your access badge, and have no further contact with employees." Daniel staggered backward. "You can't." "We already did." Security appeared at the door. Humiliation washed over him, hot, choking, unforgettable. He grabbed his coat with trembling hands as the room blurred around him. Every step toward the exit felt like walking off a cliff. Cameras flashed as soon as he stepped outside. Reporters shouted his name. "Mr. Cole, is it true you embezzled company funds? Did your mistress leak the tapes? Have you lost contact with your wife?" He shoved through the crowd, slipping on slush, breath coming in broken bursts. For the first time in his adult life, Daniel Cole had nowhere to go. No home that welcomed him. No wife to soothe him. No mistress to admire him. No job to protect him. No power left to wield. The fall had begun, and there was no bottom in sight. The Vermont wind had settled by the next morning, coating the world in a still, glittering silence. Inside the cabin, the fire burned low, filling the room with soft amber light. Liam was awake now, eating oatmeal at the small table, his cheeks rosy from sleep. Marissa watched him with a fragile calm, though the confrontation from the night before echoed through her bones. Adrian brewed coffee in the tiny kitchenette, deliberately giving her space but staying close enough that she felt anchored. She wrapped her hands around the warm mug he placed in front of her. "You didn't sleep," he said gently. Marissa shook her head. "I kept hearing his voice, even when he stopped talking." Adrian sat across from her. "He came to intimidate you. That's what he does." She swallowed, throat tight. "He used to be different. Or maybe I just believed he was." "You believed he could be the man you hoped for," Adrian corrected softly. "That isn't foolishness, that's loyalty." Loyalty. A word that had become both her virtue and her cage. Before she could respond, Liam toddled over and climbed into her lap. She kissed his hair, breathing him in like a reminder of why she left, why she had to keep going. Adrian watched the moment quietly. "He's happier here," he said. "I can tell." Marissa nodded slowly. "He doesn't flinch at loud noises here, doesn't tense when the door opens." Adrian hesitated before asking, "And you? How do you feel here?" She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze drifted to the frost-glazed window, where the forest shimmered beneath the winter sun. "Free," she whispered. Scared, but free. The admission cracked something open inside her. Just then, her phone powered on for the first time, buzzed violently. Dozens of notifications flooded the screen. News alerts, company memos, voicemails, all tied to one man, Daniel Cole. Her stomach dropped as she skimmed the headlines. Executive under investigation after leaked audio. Mistress turns over evidence. Legal team confirms financial misconduct. She covered her mouth. "Oh my God, Daniel." Adrian leaned in. "You didn't cause this." "He did." "I know," she whispered. "But I have the files, the ones tying everything together. If investigators find me—" "They won't," Adrian said firmly. "You decide what happens next. Not Daniel, not the company, you." That thought terrified her more than anything. Marissa stood and stepped outside onto the porch, breathing the icy air. The snow crunched under her boots as she stared out at the pine trees, swaying gently. For 12 years, every decision had been shaped by Daniel, his moods, his needs, his lies. She had shrunk herself to keep the peace. She had apologized for wounds she never caused. She had feared making choices because choices made him angry. But now, she had a choice he couldn't take from her. Adrian followed her outside, keeping a respectful distance. "Whatever you decide," he said, "you won't face it alone." She closed her eyes, letting the truth settle. She didn't owe Daniel loyalty anymore. She didn't owe the company silence. She didn't owe her past another chance. When she opened her eyes, a quiet, steady resolve replaced the fear. "I'm choosing Liam," she said softly. "And I'm choosing myself." Her voice didn't tremble. For the first time, it didn't have to. The next morning arrived quietly, as if the world itself was giving Marissa space to breathe. Vermont sunlight spilled across the snow, turning every branch outside the cabin into a silver sculpture. The storm had passed, but inside her chest, something else was only just beginning to settle, a sense of direction she hadn't felt in years. Marissa sat on the porch steps with a blanket around her shoulders, watching Liam build a crooked little snowman. His laughter rose into the cold air, unburdened, unshadowed. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't rushing to silence her thoughts or make excuses for another person's behavior. She simply existed, and that itself felt revolutionary. Behind her, the cabin door creaked open. Adrian stepped out, holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate, one for her, one for Liam. He placed hers gently beside her on the railing. "You look lighter today," he said. Marissa let out a soft breath. "I feel different." "It's so. How so?" She watched Liam carefully pack snow into the snowman's misshapen head. "I keep waiting for the panic to hit again, but it hasn't. It's like my mind finally has room to breathe." Adrian nodded slowly. "When you stop living in survival mode, peace can feel unnerving at first." She looked up at him, curious. "You sound like you've walked out of something yourself." He smiled faintly. "Everyone has their storms, Marissa. Some just hide them better." Defensive, A.M. The moment lingered quiet, warm, respectful. Not intrusive, not demanding. A kind of presence she'd forgotten men were capable of. Inside the cabin, her phone buzzed again. She ignored it. She needed this morning, needed these breaths, needed to remember she was a person before she was someone's wife. But reality didn't disappear simply because she willed it away. When she finally went inside, the latest headline froze her in place. Daniel Cole. Under federal review, investigators seek family statement. Her heart pounded. They were looking for her. And they would keep looking. For a split second, the old instinct surged: hide, freeze, let him handle it, stay small. But then she remembered Daniel on the porch last night, pounding the door like a man entitled to entry into her life. She remembered the audio leaks, the years of gaslighting, the loneliness carved into her bones. No, she was done shrinking. She sat at the table, opening the folder of documents she'd taken. Every page reflected who Daniel had become and who she refused to be anymore. Adrian watched her carefully. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking." She exhaled shakily. "I could turn these in. Not to hurt him. But because it's the right thing for Liam. For me, for anyone else he would take advantage of." "You'd be incredibly brave for doing that," Adrian said. "No," she corrected softly. "I'd just be honest. You know." For the first time, the weight of her past loosened its grip. Liam tugged at her sleeve, snowflakes still clinging to his hair. "Mommy, look, he has arms now." She laughed, a pure, unguarded sound that startled even her. "Your snowman looks perfect." And in that tiny, frozen cabin, surrounded by the aftermath of everything she'd survived, Marissa realized something simple. She was no longer rebuilding Daniel's world. She was building her own. By the time Daniel Cole returned to his temporary corporate housing, an impersonal, sterile apartment arranged by his company during internal investigations, he looked nothing like the man who had once strutted through Manhattan, believing the world bent for him. Snow clung to his suit, his hair was unkempt, and the lines around his eyes had deepened into something harsher than exhaustion. He dropped his keys onto the counter. The sound echoed in the empty space. No family, no warmth, no control. He turned on the television for background noise, but what he heard instead made his entire body lock. Breaking news. Federal officials launch expanded investigation into Cole Marketing Group scandal. Sources confirm whistleblower documents may exist. Executives preparing for potential criminal charges. Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. "Whistleblower?" he whispered. No. Marissa wouldn't, but he stopped. Because he wasn't sure anymore. For years, he had relied on her silence, her softness, her loyalty. He thought she'd never leave, never question him, never fight back. But the version of her he saw last night through the cabin window, the woman who didn't flinch, didn't beg, didn't fold under his anger, was not the woman he married. And that terrified him more than federal agents ever could. He paced the living room, breathing hard. She has the documents. She took them. She's planning something. There's a mentor. A cold wave washed over him. She's going to destroy me. His phone buzzed violently. He grabbed it, hoping, stupidly, desperately, that it might be Marissa. It wasn't. It was Brooke. Again. He almost didn't answer. But fear broke his hesitation. What do you want? He snapped. Her laughter was sharp, brittle, vicious. Oh, relax. I'm not here to ruin anything else. I just think you should know, the SEC reached out to me again. And they're building a timeline. Daniel's grip tightened. Brooke, listen to me. Whatever's happening, you need to retract your statement. Retract? She scoffed. Sweetheart, I'm protecting myself. You're the one who bragged about the off-books account. You're the one who told me nobody would catch you. I just pressed record. His jaw clenched so hard it ached. You didn't have to turn it in. Well, you didn't have to lie to me about divorcing your wife for 6 months, she fired back. Actions have consequences. He froze. Consequences. A word Marissa had lived under. A word he thought never applied to him. Brooke continued, voice now sugary and cruel. And by the way, if your wife really does have the missing files, investigators will find her. And trust me, they'll listen to her far more than they'll listen to you. He hung up, pulse thundering in his ears. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. The walls closed in, suffocating. In desperation, he dialed Marissa's number. Straight to voicemail. Marissa, he said, voice trembling despite his effort to steady it. We need to talk. Please. I made mistakes, but you can't let this go any further. Think about Liam. Think about our family. Silence swallowed the room. He called again. Voicemail. For the first time, Daniel sank onto the floor, burying his face in his hands. It wasn't the scandal that broke him. It wasn't Brooke's betrayal. It wasn't even the threat of losing his career. It was the crushing, undeniable truth finally settling over him. Marissa didn't fear him anymore. And without her fear, he had nothing, no power, no leverage, no identity. This wasn't just a fall. It was the end. The day after news of Daniel's deepening scandal broke nationwide, the Vermont woods felt impossibly calm. Frost clung to every branch, glittering like powdered diamonds. The sky, pale blue and endless, stretched over the cabin where Marissa finally felt something she barely recognized any more quiet inside her own mind. She stood at the small kitchen counter, slicing apples for Liam while he colored at the table. The simple rhythm of normal life, no yelling, no accusations, no footsteps she feared hearing, felt like a blessing she hadn't known she was allowed to have. But the silence didn't erase reality. It only gave her space to face it. When Adrian stepped into the cabin, carrying a cardboard box of groceries, the room warmed a little. He shook snow from his hair and set the bags on the table. You didn't have to do this, Marissa said. I know, he replied with a gentle smile, but I wanted to. He unpacked bread, soup, fruit, and a small paperback book. She frowned slightly. What's that? He held it out to her. Meditations. Marcus Aurelius. A book he had once recommended years ago when she treated overwhelmed mothers who didn't know how to cope. Thought it might help, he said softly. It helped me. She ran her finger over the worn cover. The idea of healing, of rebuilding, felt foreign but maybe not impossible. After lunch, Liam napped, and the cabin settled into a gentle hush. Marissa stood by the window, staring out at the snowy forest. Adrian joined her, resting his hands in his coat pockets. You seem stronger today, he said. She let out a breath that frosted against the glass. I kept waiting for guilt to come. Or regret, but instead, I just feel clearer. You finally stepped out of a storm you didn't realize you'd been living in. Maybe, she whispered, but part of me still feels broken. Adrian shook his head. Not broken, reshaping. Those words nearly brought her to tears. She wiped her cheek quickly. I'm scared of what happens next. If investigators come, if Daniel tries something again, if I can't protect Liam. You already did, Adrian said. You left, you told the truth, and you survived what many people never escape. His certainty steadied her. The afternoon sun dipped low, painting gold streaks over the snow. Liam wandered into the room, rubbing his eyes, and reached wordlessly for Marissa. She lifted him, and he rested his head on her shoulder, small arms wrapping around her neck. Adrian smiled softly at the sight. He feels safe. That's because of you. Marissa kissed Liam's forehead, holding him close. I hope so. You don't have to hope, Adrian said. You can see it. The wind rattled the cabin window, but instead of flinching, Marissa simply inhaled slow, steady, sure. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't running. She was choosing. For herself? For her son? For a life that didn't ask her to shrink. Later, when Adrian helped Liam build a snow fort outside and she watched them from the steps, a realization settled over her like a warm blanket. This quiet joy, this safety, this possibility, was the beginning of her becoming whole again. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future she didn't fear. Vermont's late afternoon sun filtered through the bare trees, casting long golden streaks across the snow. Marissa stood outside the cabin, bundled in a wool coat, her arms folded loosely as she watched Adrian and Liam shaping snow blocks for the fort they'd been building all week. Their laughter drifted across the clearing, gentle, warm, safe. Sounds she once believed didn't belong in her life anymore. Liam toddled toward Adrian with a crooked snow block, slipping a little on the ice. Before Marissa could move, Adrian scooped the boy up and spun him lightly. "There he is," Adrian said, grinning. "My little architect." Liam giggled and wrapped his small arms around Adrian's neck. "Daddy-in, help me build the roof." Marissa froze. Adrian froze. For a heartbeat, the entire world stilled in the crystalline air. Liam had never called another man anything close to Dad. He barely used the word for Daniel anymore. But now, with childlike innocence and absolute certainty, he combined two words, Daddy and Adrian, into something unexpectedly pure. Marissa pressed a hand to her chest, surprised by the sudden wave of emotion rising inside her. Not fear, not guilt, something softer, something long denied. Adrian met her eyes across the snow, unsure, vulnerable in a way she had never seen. I didn't teach him that," he said quietly. "I know." Her voice shook. "He feels safe with you. Dan. Tendery." Liam wriggled down and ran back to the fort, leaving the two of them standing several feet apart, far enough for breath to steady, close enough for truth to settle between them. Adrian stepped toward her, cautiously. "If that made you uncomfortable, I can talk to him. I don't want you to feel pressured." She shook her head. "It didn't make me uncomfortable. Just surprised." "You've had enough surprises this year," he said gently. "Yes." Her breath fogged in the cold. "But this one didn't hurt." For a long moment, neither spoke. The hush of the forest wrapped around them like a blanket. Somewhere in the trees, a winter bird called out. Snow drifted lazily to the ground. Then Adrian said softly, "Marissa, I care about you, deeply. But your healing comes first. Not expectations, not relationships, just you." His restraint, his patience, qualities Daniel never possessed, stirred something warm inside her chest. "I don't know what the future looks like," she admitted, "but for the first time, I'm not afraid of it." A slow, relieved smile touched Adrian's lips. "That's all I want for you." Behind them, Liam shouted proudly, "Mommy, look, it's done." They walked together toward the crooked snow fort, a quiet partnership forming without needing to be named. When Marissa reached Liam, he tugged her hand. "Can Daddy-in stay with us?" he asked innocently. Marissa's throat tightened. She brushed a mittened hand over her son's cheek. "Maybe he can," she said softly. "Maybe for a long time." Adrian looked away, visibly affected, clearing his throat before kneeling to admire the fort. But Marissa saw it, the flicker of hope he tried to hide. For years, her life had been shaped by fear, control, and smallness. Today, in the fading Vermont sunlight, she felt something expand inside her. She deserved joy. She deserved gentleness. She deserved a future that didn't shrink her. And for the first time since leaving Daniel, she allowed herself to imagine a life where love wasn't something she fought for. It was something freely given. The federal building in Manhattan buzzed with reporters, flashing cameras, and the chaotic hum of a scandal reaching its breaking point. Inside a stark interrogation room, Daniel Cole sat hunched over a metal table, hands shaking as agents leafed through stacks of documents. Documents he once controlled, documents he never expected anyone to see. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial fraud, manipulation of accounts, off-book transfers, falsified invoices, all signed, all traceable, all his. "Mr. Cole," the lead investigator said, "your wife's cooperation was not required. We obtained everything through legal channels. You left a trail you couldn't erase." Daniel's breath stuttered. "Marissa, turned me in?" "No," the agent said flatly. "You turned yourself in the moment you underestimated her." Those words crushed whatever pride Daniel had left, because they were true. She didn't destroy him. He destroyed himself, and she simply stepped out of the way. By the time Daniel was escorted out in handcuffs, flashes from reporters' cameras illuminated the gray snow around him. A life built on control and ego collapsed beneath the weight of consequences he had never believed would touch him. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in Vermont, Marissa Cole stood on the porch of the cabin, snowflakes melting in her hair as the sky blushed a soft winter pink. Liam played nearby, chasing his own shadows in the snow. Adrian emerged from the cabin holding 2 steaming mugs. "You've seen the news," he said gently. She nodded. She had. Daniel's downfall was everywhere. But instead of satisfaction, she felt something quieter, peace. Not revenge. Not triumph. Just release. "I thought it would feel heavier," she admitted. "I thought I'd feel guilty." "You chose truth," Adrian said. "Truth is only heavy when someone's been living under lies." She closed her eyes, breathing in crisp, pine-scented air. For the first time, she wasn't haunted by footsteps behind her. She wasn't bracing for the next storm. Her storm was over. Later, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, she took Liam's hand and walked with him down the snowy path. Adrian followed a few steps behind, giving her space but staying close, always close enough that she felt supported, never close enough to feel trapped. At the clearing overlooking the frozen lake, Liam tugged her coat. "Mommy, are we staying here forever?" She knelt to meet his eyes. "No, sweetheart, not forever, but long enough to feel safe. Long enough to start our new life." Over one no. "Will Adrian come too?" Liam asked. Marissa looked back at Adrian. The man who had shown up when she disappeared. The man who saw her truth before she could speak it. The man who chose kindness where others chose control. "If he wants to," she said softly. Adrian stepped toward them, the cold turning his breath to mist. "I'd like that," he said, "more than you know." Warmth bloomed in Marissa's chest, a warmth she thought she'd never feel again. She wasn't replacing a past. She was opening a future. As the 3 of them stood together overlooking the quiet Vermont lake, the world felt new, raw, and open. Daniel had lost everything he manipulated to keep. Marissa had gained everything she once believed she didn't deserve. Freedom, safety, and a love that didn't demand her silence. This wasn't her escape. It was her beginning. So the story has come to a close, my wonderful friends, and if you're still here with me at this very moment, then something in Marissa's journey must have touched your heart in a personal way. Maybe it reminded you of your own strength, or of a time you had to walk through a storm you didn't ask for. And now, together, let's take a gentle breath and look at what this story is really telling us. Marissa's path reminds us of a truth the Stoics repeated often. You have power over your mind, not outside events. She couldn't change Daniel. She couldn't change betrayal. But she could choose courage, honesty, and freedom. And that choice rebuilt her life. Another Stoic line I love says, "What stands in the way becomes the way." Every hardship she faced became the doorway to becoming stronger, clearer, and finally at peace. So if you're listening right now, maybe this is your reminder that healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's simply choosing yourself after years of forgetting you mattered. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe so we can keep walking through these emotional journeys together. You never know who might need this message today.